The Federal High Court in Lagos was unusually silent. Even the ceiling fans seemed to turn more softly. Everyone knew Justice Chukwudi Okafor. At 68, he was a legal legend. Newspapers called him the Lion of Justice. Politicians feared him. Criminals dreaded him. Young lawyers quoted his rulings as if they were scripture. He was a widower, a father of two accomplished daughters, a man of impeccable reputation, and a man carrying a secret so old he believed it had died. "Call the next case," he said. The court registrar rose. "The Federal Republic of Nigeria versus Obinna Nwafor, charged with armed robbery and theft." Two policemen escorted a lean young man into the dock. He could not have been more than 29. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes were defiant. Yet beneath the toughness was a familiar sadness. Justice Okafor barely noticed him, until the prosecution presented Exhibit A. A gold necklace. The judge froze. The emerald pendant gleamed. His breath caught. 32 years vanished. He was no longer in Lagos. He was a poor law student in Enugu, standing beneath a mango tree with a woman whose laughter had once been his entire future. Chukwudi Okafor was a scholarship student at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. He was brilliant, very brilliant. His father, Chief Okafor, was wealthy and powerful, but believed hardship built character. Adaeze Eze was the opposite of everything Chukwudi knew. She was warm, fearless, and outrageously honest. The daughter of a schoolteacher from Enugu, she believed law was a tool to defend the weak. They met during a moot court competition. The interfaculty moot court competition was packed. Students squeezed into the lecture hall, eager to watch the university's brightest law minds battle over a fictional constitutional dispute. Chukwudi represented the prosecution team. Adaeze represented the defense. He had heard her name before. Everyone had. She talks too much. She argues like a senior lawyer. She's trouble. When she entered the hall wearing a simple white blouse and black skirt, Chukwudi almost frowned. She looked too soft, too calm, too confident. Then the debate began, and within 10 minutes, she destroyed him. By the time the competition ended, the audience applauded wildly for her. Chukwudi packed his books immediately, avoiding everyone's eyes. Humiliation burned in his chest. As he exited the hall, a voice called after him, "Barrister Angry Face!" He turned sharply. Adaeze jogged toward him, smiling. Up close, she was even more striking. Dark, intelligent eyes, smooth brown skin, a tiny gap between her teeth when she smiled, and a fearless energy that made it impossible not to look at her. "What do you want?" he asked coldly. She held out roasted corn wrapped in newspaper. "A peace offering." "I don't need it." "You look like someone who desperately needs it." Against his will, he almost smiled. "Almost." Adaeze tilted her head. "You're taking this too seriously. You embarrassed me in there." "No," she corrected gently. "The law embarrassed you. I simply introduced both of you." He stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A real laugh, the kind he had not released in years. Adaeze's smile softened. "There," she said quietly. "You look human now." That evening changed everything. What began as rivalry slowly became friendship. Within months, they were inseparable. They studied together. They dreamed together. They planned a life of justice and service. And Chukwudi loved her with the kind of certainty that only exists once. One day, after an intensive misunderstanding about his father disliking her, Chukwudi visited Adaeze. From his pocket, he removed a small velvet box. Inside lay a gold necklace with an emerald teardrop. My mother gave me this before she died, he said. So? Adizi asked, still annoyed at him. I want to give it to you to know how important you're to me, Chukwudi said, Adizi's eyes filled with tears. Then it is too precious. That is why it belongs to you. He fastened it around her neck. When I become a judge, he whispered, you will be my wife. Adiza smiled, and when you forget your promises, this necklace will remind you. They laughed. Neither knew how prophetic those words would become. The letter arrived on a Monday morning, cream-coloured envelope. Foreign stamp. The crest of a prestigious university in United Kingdom, printed boldly across the top. Chukwudi stared at it for nearly a full minute before opening it. His hands trembled. By the time he finished reading, his heartbeat had become violent. He had been accepted. A full postgraduate legal program abroad, one of the most competitive opportunities available to young Nigerian lawyers. The kind of opportunity that changed entire bloodlines. The kind people sacrificed everything to obtain. For years, Chukwudi had dreamed of this exact moment. Adizi was more excited than he was when he told her about it. When his father heard the news, he smiled proudly. Well done. Coming from Chief Okafor, those words carried the weight of a national award. Thank you, father. You have made this family proud. Chukwudi felt relief loosen his chest. And the girl? The relief vanished instantly. I don't understand, father. Chief Okafor's expression hardened. You are about to enter a different world, Chukwudi. Powerful men do not marry for emotion. They marry for stability, influence, advantage. I love her, his father laughed softly, not kindly. You are young. I am serious. So was I at your age. Chief Okafor stepped closer. Listen carefully. Opportunities like this come once in a lifetime. Do not destroy your future over temporary feelings. Chukwudi's jaw tightened. Adizi is not temporary. His father's eyes became cold. Then choose. Silence flooded the room. You are destined for greatness, Chief Okafor said. Do not tie yourself to a poor girl with no influence. Chukwudi resisted. Then his father threatened to withdraw all support. The following afternoon, Adairs found him unusually quiet. The warmth between them felt strained, distant. Adozi studied him carefully. What happened at home? Nothing. Another lie, he sighed heavily. My father does not approve of us. Adiza looked down briefly, then nodded. Why? He wants me to focus on my future. And? Chukwudi struggled to answer. Because the truth sounded ugly even inside his own mind. Adiza noticed the hesitation instantly. Fear flickered across her face. Chukwudi. He could not meet her eyes. Adiza's voice trembled. What did he say? Finally, painfully, he answered. He thinks we should end things. The words hung between them like smoke. Adizi stared at him. Not angry, not yet. Just wounded. And what do you think? We'll get through it, he assured her. Days later, terrified of losing his future, Chukwudi made the most cowardly decision of his life. Or perhaps fear made it for him. He convinced himself it was temporary, that once he established himself abroad, he would return for a daisy. That success would fix everything. That love could survive abandonment. Cowards always create beautiful lies before betrayal. Unable to face her directly, he wrote a letter. Short, cold, cruel. Adiaze. I have thought carefully about our relationship. I no longer believe our future goals align. It is best we end things now before deeper damage is done. Please do not contact me again. I wish you well. Chukwudi. He stared at the words afterward, horrified by what he had written. It sounded like a stranger, not the man who once promised forever beneath moonlit trees. Not the man who placed his mother's necklace around her neck, but he folded the letter anyway and sent it. Adiz received it 3 days later. At first, she thought it was a joke. Then confusion became disbelief. Disbelief became pain. Pain became silence. She sat motionless for nearly an hour staring at the paper. When tears finally came, they did not stop. The morning Chukwudi left for the airport, Chief Okafor drove him personally. Neither spoke much during the journey. As the car approached the airport entrance, Chukwudi suddenly looked back through the rear window. Half of him still expected Adiza to appear somehow, running toward him, stopping him, giving him one final reason to stay. But she never came, because by then Adiza had already learned the most painful lesson of her young life. A man can love you deeply and still abandon you for his ambition. For weeks after Chukwudi left Nigeria, Adiza moved through life like a ghost. At first, anger sustained her. She tore up photographs, avoided mutual friends, ignored every mention of his name. When classmates asked questions, she smiled tightly and claimed she was fine. But late at night, after everyone slept, she cried into her pillow until dawn. Not because Chukwudi had left, but because he had left so easily. That was the wound she could not understand. How could a man promise eternity 1 month and vanish the next? One afternoon, nearly 6 weeks after his departure, Adiza collapsed during a lecture. Her classmates rushed toward her in panic. "Adiza, get water! She's not waking up." When she regained consciousness at the campus clinic, the nurse smiled knowingly. "You should stop stressing yourself." Adiza frowned weakly. "What do you mean?" The nurse handed her a small test result. "You're pregnant." The room became silent, utterly silent. Adiza stared at the words without breathing. Pregnant. Her hand drifted instinctively toward her stomach. 1,000 emotions crashed through her at once. Shock, fear, confusion, and beneath all of it, love. A tiny, fragile life now existed inside her. A life created from promises already broken. Adiza sat alone in her hostel room, clutching the necklace around her neck. The emerald pendant felt cold against her skin. For hours she debated calling Chukwudi. Surely he deserved to know. Surely he would come back after hearing the truth, wouldn't he? But every time hope appeared, the memory of his letter crushed it again. "Please do not contact me again." The cruelty of those words still burned. Eventually Adiza lowered the phone slowly. Tears filled her eyes. "No," she whispered to herself. "If he could abandon me, he can abandon this child too." And in that moment, something inside her hardened, not hatred. Something sadder, acceptance. When Adiza told her family, reactions exploded instantly. Her mother nearly fainted. Her uncle shouted in outrage, "Where is the man responsible?" "He has gone abroad," Adiza answered quietly. "Then contact him." "No." "Are you mad? He must take responsibility." Adiza's eyes filled with tears. "I will not beg anybody to love me." The room fell silent. Her mother sat beside her gently. "What will you do now?" Adiza touched her stomach carefully. "I will keep my child." Despite the fear in her voice, there was determination too. Because deep down, Adiza already understood something powerful. This child was innocent. Whatever pain existed between her and Chukwudi, did not belong to the baby growing inside her. Pregnancy transformed her life completely. Whispers followed her around campus. Some students pitied her, others judged her harshly. A few pretended friendship only to spread gossip later. The brilliant Adiza got abandoned. She thought he would marry her. Men always leave eventually. Each whisper cut deeply. She dropped out of school and depended on her family who never gave up on her. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away in London, Chukwudi buried himself in ambition. He studied obsessively, networked relentlessly, won academic praise everywhere he went. Professors admired his brilliance. Colleagues predicted greatness. And outwardly his life appeared successful. But privately, he was miserable. No achievement quieted the emptiness inside him. At night, memories of Adiza haunted him unexpectedly. Her laughter, her stubborn arguments, the warmth of her hand. Sometimes he nearly wrote to her, but shame stopped him. Cowardice finished the rest, so instead he convinced himself she had moved on, that forgetting each other was healthier. He never imagined that while he built a future abroad, Adiza carried his child alone. Months later, labour pains began. The small clinic smelled of antiseptic and fear. Adiza screamed through contractions while her mother held her hand tightly. "You can do this," her mother whispered repeatedly. Hours passed. Pain became unbearable. Then suddenly, a baby cried, loud, strong, alive. The nurse smiled broadly as she wrapped the newborn carefully. "It's a boy." Adiza burst into tears the moment they placed him in her arms. His eyes remained closed as he slept peacefully against her chest. And somehow, despite everything, looking at him healed something inside her. "What will you name him?" the nurse asked softly. Adiza stared down at her son, then she whispered, "Obinna." Her mother smiled faintly. "Father's heart." Adiza nodded slowly. The name carried complicated meaning, because whether Chukwudi deserved it or not, part of him still existed inside this child. 2 years later, she got married and moved to Lagos with her husband. But sadly, 5 years after the marriage, she lost her husband in a ghastly road accident. She was left to cater for the family. She had 2 beautiful girls from the marriage. Years passed. Obinna grew into a bright, stubborn young man with sharp intelligence and restless anger simmering beneath the surface. He excelled academically despite hardship. Teachers praised him constantly. He could become anything, one teacher told Adiza proudly. But poverty has a way of exhausting even the brightest futures. School fees piled up, food prices rose, and eventually Adiza's health began to fail. At first it was exhaustion, then fainting spells, then severe pain. Doctors finally diagnosed kidney disease. Treatment costs were overwhelming. Obinna watched his mother grow weaker every month, and slowly desperation began changing him. Because there is a dangerous moment in every poor person's life, the moment's survival becomes more urgent than morality, and Obinna Nwafor was approaching that moment fast, all while his father remained completely unaware that somewhere in Nigeria, the child he never knew existed was preparing to enter darkness. By the time Obinna turned 21, poverty had stopped feeling temporary. It felt permanent, like a curse stitched into his skin. Every morning in Lagos began the same way. Horns blaring endlessly, Danfo buses rattling violently through crowded roads, conductors shouting destinations into polluted air. Oshodi, CMS, Oberlande. The city never slept. It swallowed dreams too quickly for that. And somewhere inside its chaos, Obinna Nwafor was slowly disappearing. After Adiz's illness worsened, school became impossible. Dialysis consumed everything. Hospital bills multiplied weekly, rent piled up, electricity vanished frequently. Food became a luxury. To
How am I gonna
survive,
pay?
Obinna worked everywhere he could. Bus conductor, mechanic apprentice, night security guard, loader at Mile 12 Market. Any job, every job. None lasted long. Some employers refused to pay him fully. Others treated him like dirt. One man slapped him publicly over missing change. Obinna nearly attacked him before co-workers restrained him. Humiliation accumulated slowly inside him like poison. Meanwhile, Adiz's condition continued deteriorating. Some nights, Obinna sat beside her hospital bed, with his siblings listening to machines beep softly while fear crushed his chest. She had grown thinner, weaker, older. Pain shadowed her eyes constantly now, yet she still smiled whenever he entered the room. "Have you people eaten?" she always asked first. Even while dying, she worried more about them than herself. That alone nearly broke Obinna. One rainy evening, Obinna stood outside a pharmacy calculating costs in his head. The medication in his hand cost more than his entire weekly earnings. His pockets contained barely enough transport fare. He stared at the receipt helplessly. Then a voice beside him spoke quietly. "You look like a man losing a war." Obinna turned. A tall man leaned against the wall smoking a cigarette. Scar across one eyebrow, expensive sandals, dangerous eyes. His name was Sly. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him. The type of man mothers warned their sons about. Obinna frowned. "I'm fine," Sly laughed softly. "No poor man standing outside a pharmacy at midnight is fine." Obinna tried walking away. Sly stopped him. "There are faster ways to make money." At first, Obinna refused completely. He was not a criminal. Whatever hardship existed, he still had principles. But poverty is patient. It attacks daily. Quietly. Relentlessly. Weeks later, Adiz collapsed during dialysis complications. Doctors demanded immediate payment before treatment could continue. Obinna begged, borrowed, sold belongings. Nothing was enough. That night, desperation finally overpowered pride. He called Sly. The first job seemed harmless. Snatch a phone, run, sell it, no violence. No weapons, Sly assured him. No blood. Obinna hated himself the entire time. His heartbeat thundered violently as he grabbed the phone from a distracted man near a traffic junction. Then he ran, fast, terrified. The victim shouted behind him. Cars honked, people cursed, but Obinna escaped. That evening, Sly handed him more money than he had earned in 2 months of honest labor. Obinna stared at the cash silently, his stomach twisted with shame. Yet when he used the money to buy his mother's medication, Adizi smiled weakly and whispered, "God bless you, my son." The words stabbed him deeper than insults ever could, because she believed the money came from honest work. And for the first time in his life, Obinna understood how easily desperation can corrupt a good person. Days turned into months. One theft became several, then many. Obinna learned quickly how to move through crowds unnoticed, how to identify wealthy targets, how to disappear into Lagos traffic before victims reacted. He hated every second of it, but crime paid faster than honesty ever had, and illness does not wait for morality. Soon he became one of Sly's most trusted boys. Still, unlike the others, Obinna avoided violence whenever possible. He never carried guns, never attacked elderly people intentionally, never harmed children. Tiny rules designed to convince himself he was not completely lost. But deep down, he knew the truth. A thief remains a thief regardless of excuses. Rain fell over Lagos like the city itself was mourning. Water flooded broken roads. Danfo buses splashed muddy gutters onto pedestrians. Street lights flickered weakly through thick evening fog. And somewhere inside the storm, Obina Nwafor made the decision that would destroy the fragile balance of his life forever. Earlier that morning, Adaiza had collapsed again. This time the doctors did not hide their urgency. She needs immediate dialysis, the physician said firmly, and payment must be made before treatment continues. Obina felt panic tighten around his chest. How much? The doctor mentioned the figure. Obina stared helplessly. I need more time. You do not have more time. Those words echoed in his mind for the rest of the day. You do not have more time. By evening, desperation had become unbearable. Obina sat alone beneath a leaking bus stop, counting the money in his pocket repeatedly. Still not enough. Not even close. Rain hammered the rusted roof overhead. Cars hissed through wet streets nearby. Then his phone buzzed. Sly. Big opportunity tonight, the gang leader said immediately. Obina closed his eyes. I'm done with this life. Sly laughed harshly. Poor people don't retire from crime, my brother. I said I'm done. You need money or not. Silence. Sly's voice softened slightly. Victoria Island. Rich targets. Easy work. Obina stared at the rain, then thought of a Daisy lying weakly in a hospital bed. A long moment passed before he answered quietly. What time? That night, Lagos glittered with wealth completely disconnected from the suffering happening elsewhere in the city. Luxury cars rolled through Victoria Island. Expensive restaurants overflowed with laughter and music. Well-dressed couples hurried beneath umbrellas. People who would never understand what desperation truly felt like. Obina stood beneath a restaurant yawning, pretending to check his phone while rain soaked the streets. Sly and two others waited nearby. Relax, Sly muttered. You look guilty already. Obina ignored him, his stomach twisted violently. Every instinct warned him to leave, but hospital bills had a louder voice than conscience. Nearly 40 minutes passed before Sly nodded subtly toward an elderly woman exiting an upscale pharmacy. She's perfect. Obina looked up. The woman moved carefully through the rain holding a handbag close to her chest. Elegant but elderly, grey hair neatly wrapped beneath a scarf. Something about her reminded him painfully of Adai's. No, Obina said immediately. Sly frowned. What? She's old. So? Find another target. Sly grabbed his arm sharply. This isn't charity work. The elderly woman approached the roadside, searching for a taxi. Rain poured harder now, traffic slowed. People hurried past without noticing anything. Sly leaned closer. Take the bag and run, that's all. Obina hesitated one final second. Then survival crushed morality again. Everything happened fast, too fast. Obina stepped forward, grabbed the handbag violently. The woman screamed. No, thief! Her voice pierced through the rain. Obina ran instantly. Footsteps splashed through flooded streets behind him. People shouted, Catch him! Thief! Adrenaline surged through his body as he sprinted toward the main road. Cars honked wildly. A motorcycle nearly struck him, then suddenly headlights, blinding. A taxi sped around the corner. Obina turned, too late. The vehicle slammed into him violently. Pain exploded through his body as he crashed against wet pavement. The stolen handbag flew from his grip into dirty floodwater. Crowds rushed towards the scene immediately. Someone kicked him hard before police officers intervened. Don't kill him! Handcuffs snapped around his wrists. Rain soaked his face as blood trickled from his forehead. Dazed and half-conscious, Obinna heard the elderly woman crying nearby. "My bag! My bag!" One officer retrieved it from the water. Inside was a small velvet pouch. The policeman opened it casually, then frowned. "Only a necklace." The elderly woman nodded shakily. "Yes." Her voice broke. "I just bought it today." Earlier that same afternoon, Adiza had instructed her daughter Vivian to sell the jewellery so, for her treatments to begin, quietly inside a small jewellery shop in Lagos. The elderly woman, now identified as Mrs. Florence Balogan, had admired the necklace immediately. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Vivian forced a faint smile. "It my mom's. You must love it very much." Vivian's fingers tightened around the pendant briefly. Mrs. Balogan paid generously for it after hearing her reason for wanting to sell it. And just like that, the necklace that once symbolized eternal love changed ownership for the first time in 3 decades. Back at the station, Obinna lowered his head into trembling hands. A policeman approached the cell bars. "You're lucky the old woman survived the shock." Obinna said nothing, because for the first time since entering crime, he no longer felt unlucky. He felt guilty. Truly guilty. Back in court, Justice Okafor gripped the arms of his chair. The accused stood tall, meeting his gaze with a mixture of anger and pride. Something about the young man's eyes felt like looking into a mirror from another era. "How did you obtain this necklace?" the judge asked. Obinna shrugged. "By stealing a handbag." "Do you know where this necklace originated?" Obinna glanced briefly at the evidence tray. "Should I? It's just gold." Just gold. To everyone else, perhaps. To Justice Okafor, it was the wreckage of a life he had abandoned. Justice Okafor's pulse quickened dangerously. "What is your mother's name?" The prosecutor looked confused now. Even Obinna frowned suspiciously. "Adiza Nwafor." The judge froze completely. "Is she here?" Obinna shrugged. A strange roaring filled Justice Okafor's ears. The courtroom blurred slightly. He removed his glasses carefully to steady himself. No one understood the earthquake happening behind his calm expression. And just then, Adiza walked in. She wore a simple navy blue wrapper and the matching blouse. Her steps measured with carefulness. She had insisted on coming to her son's trial, irrespective of her deteriorating condition. At first, Chukwudi did not recognize her completely. Time had touched her gently but unmistakably. Life had carved itself into her features now. Silver threaded through her hair. Her face looked thinner, softer, tired. Yet, despite everything, she still carried the same quiet strength, the same intelligent eyes. The same dignity that once made him fall helplessly in love. Nothing extravagant, nothing dramatic, but the moment Justice Okafor saw her sitting silently in the gallery, the courtroom disappeared again. 32 years collapsed into a single unbearable second. Adiz looked toward the bench slowly. Their eyes met. Just then she recognized him instantly. A tear rolled down Adiz's cheek. She didn't wipe it away. For a long moment she simply stared at him, at the man she had loved, the man she had hated, the man she had never completely forgotten. The file in Chukwudi's hand slipped from his fingers. Papers scattered across the bench. The courtroom fell silent. Nobody understood why. And suddenly, he felt 23 years old again. Meanwhile, Obinna noticed it too. His eyes narrowed suspiciously. Why was the judge paying attention to his mother? Something about the entire atmosphere felt wrong. unsettling. During a short recess, Justice Okafor made a decision that terrified him. He instructed a court officer quietly, "Please ask the woman seated in the third gallery row to meet me in chambers." The officer nodded. Minutes later, Adiz entered his chambers slowly. The moment the door closed behind her, silence swallowed the room. For several seconds, neither spoke. Because what language exists for two people carrying 32 years of unfinished pain? Finally, Chukwudi stood. "Adize." Hearing her name in his voice again after decades nearly shattered her composure. She looked away briefly. "You became a judge after all?" The statement carried no admiration, only exhaustion. Chukwudi swallowed hard. "Yes." Another silence followed. He noticed how frail she looked up close, how carefully she moved, and suddenly guilt crashed through him with unbearable force. Life had clearly not protected her gently. Chukwudi opened a drawer carefully and removed the necklace. The emerald pendant caught the light immediately. Chukwudi's hands trembled slightly as he held the necklace. "I never imagined seeing it again." Adiz laughed faintly, a sad sound. "Life has strange ways of punishing people." The statement pierced him, because he knew she was right. Every achievement in his life suddenly felt meaningless standing before her. The robes, the awards, the respect, all of it built on a foundation of abandonment. Finally, carefully, Chukwudi asked the question burning inside him. "Is Obinna your son?" Adiz looked directly at him now. "Yes." His throat tightened. "And his father?" Silence, heavy and suffocating. Then Adizi whispered, "You left before I could tell you." The world stopped, literally stopped. Justice Okafor felt the air leave his lungs. He gripped the edge of his desk to steady himself. No denial, no uncertainty, just truth, raw and devastating. Images crashed violently through his mind. Adiz crying alone, pregnancy, birth, years of struggle, a child growing without a father while he built prestige abroad. Suddenly, every success he ever celebrated felt stained, corrupted, worthless. His voice trembled for the first time in decades. "You mean—" "Yes." Tears filled Adiz's eyes now. "He is your son, Chukwudi." The sentence shattered him completely. He sat down quietly. Finally, Chukwudi whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" Adizi stared at him in disbelief. "Tell you what? That the man who abandoned me also abandoned his child?" Pain sharpened her voice now. "For months after you left, I waited for one letter, one apology, one sign that I mattered." Chukwudi lowered his head silently. Adizi continued, "But your silence answered everything." Tears slid down her cheeks. "So I decided my son would never beg for love the way I once did." The words struck harder than any public accusation ever could. A knock interrupted the moment. "Court resumes in 5 minutes, my lord." Chukwudi could barely respond. "Yes, thank you." Adizi wiped her tears quickly and stood. But before leaving, she paused near the door. "Obinna does not know." Chukwudi looked up sharply. "He believes his father abandoned us before he was born. Nothing more." "Does he hate me?" Adiz's expression became unbearably sad. "He hates the idea of you." Then she opened the door and left, leaving Justice Chukwudi Okafor alone with the ruins of his past. Minutes later, he returned to the courtroom. Everyone rose respectfully again. But something fundamental had changed. The robes suddenly felt heavier. The bench felt colder. And the young man standing in the dock no longer appeared merely as a defendant. He appeared as flesh of his flesh, blood of his blood. Obina glanced at the judge suspiciously. He had noticed his mother leaving chambers, noticed her tear-stained eyes, noticed the judge avoiding direct eye contact now. Questions burned inside him, dangerous questions. Meanwhile, Justice Okafor stared at his son quietly. And for the first time in his career, he no longer knew how to separate justice from guilt. By the morning of the final hearing, the Federal High Court in Lagos looked less like a courthouse and more like the center of a national scandal. Rumors had spread through the legal community. Justice Okafor removed his glasses. "Before I deliver judgment, I must make a statement." The courtroom held its breath. "The accused is my biological son. I learned this only after these proceedings began. His mother and I were once engaged to be married. I abandoned them both." Gasps filled the room. Cameras clicked. "I recuse myself from sentencing effective immediately. Another judge will determine the legal consequences of the defendant's actions. But as a man, I cannot leave this courtroom without confessing that the greatest theft in this case was committed by me." His voice broke. "I stole a woman's future. I stole a child's father. And I stole 32 years that can never be returned." Even the prosecutors lowered their eyes. Justice Okafor stepped down from the bench. For the first time in his career, he stood not as judge, but as the accused. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Obina pushed past them and confronted his father in a private room. "You think tears can erase 30 years?" he shouted. "I watched my mother skip meals so I could eat. I dropped out of school. I became a thief. And all this time my father was on television giving lectures about justice." Chukwudi did not defend himself. "You are right to hate me." Obina's fists trembled. "Do you know what hurts most? I wanted to be a lawyer when I was younger." Those words pierced deeper than any accusation. Chukwudi saw the life his son might have lived, a life he had destroyed before it began. And suddenly, he saw what he had missed before, the resemblance between mother and son. Obina carried Adiz's eyes, her intensity, but other parts belonged unmistakably to him. The stubborn jaw, the posture, even the way he suppressed emotion. A cold wave passed through the judge's body. The case was reassigned because it was Obina's first major conviction, and because he had acted to fund his mother's treatment. The new judge imposed a reduced sentence with mandatory rehabilitation and community service. Justice Okafor resigned from the bench shortly afterward. The announcement stunned the nation. Many criticized him. Others admired his honesty. But public opinion no longer mattered. Chukwudi tried desperately to compensate for lost years. Insistently purchased a comfortable apartment for Adaeze and her children in a peaceful neighborhood in Abuja. Just a way of saying sorry. But Obina wasn't impressed. One humid evening in Lagos, Chukwudi visited Adeze's apartment, carrying grocery bags awkwardly like a man learning ordinary life for the first time. When Obina opened the door and saw him standing there, irritation flashed immediately across his face. "You didn't call." "I know." "Then why are you here?" Chukwudi lifted the bag slightly. "Your mother mentioned the kitchen was empty?" Obina almost rejected him instantly, but Adeze's weak voice called from inside. "Let him enter." Reluctantly, Obina stepped aside. Finally, Chukwudi stood. His hands trembled slightly. He looked first at Adaeze, then at Obina, then back at Adaeze again. His voice broke before he could even finish the first sentence. I came to ask for forgiveness. The room became completely silent. Adiz's hands trembled slightly. She quickly clasped them together to hide it, but she couldn't hide the emotions flooding through her. The anger she once carried had long ago exhausted itself. Time had softened many things, but not the wound. The wound remained, older, deeper, quieter, because some heartbreaks do not disappear. They simply become part of who you are. The atmosphere immediately felt serious. She sat upright against pillows. Weaker than usual, she looked from one man to the other. "Obina," she said gently. Her son immediately leaned closer. "Yes, Mama." Adeza squeezed his hand weakly. "I need you to do something for me." "Anything." Tears gathered in her eyes. "Forgive your father." The room became still. Painfully still, Obina lowered his head. "Mama." "No," she whispered. "Listen to me." He remained silent. "For years I carried anger inside me." She glanced toward Chukwudi. "I was hurt. I felt abandoned. I felt betrayed." Chukwudi looked away, unable to meet her eyes. But anger is a heavy thing to carry. A tear rolled down her cheek. "And I don't want my son carrying that weight for the rest of his life." Obina's eyes filled with tears. "He left us." "I know. He wasn't there." "I know. We suffered." Adizi nodded slowly. "I know, my son." For several seconds only silence remained. Then she reached for his face. "Your father cannot give you back your childhood." Obina's lips trembled. "He cannot erase the pain." Another tear slipped down Adiz's cheek. "But he is here now." Chukwudi's eyes filled. Years of guilt sat visibly on his face. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said quietly. "No," Adiza replied. "None of us deserve it." She smiled softly. "That is why it is called forgiveness." Obina looked at his father, really looked at him. For the first time, he did not see a famous judge. He did not see the man who abandoned them. He saw an aging man carrying decades of regret, a man who had finally come back. Too late, but still came back. Slowly, Obina stood. He walked across the room. Chukwudi's heart pounded. Neither spoke. Then Obina extended his hand. A simple gesture, small, yet bigger than 32 years of pain. Chukwudi stared at the hand before him. His eyes overflowed. With trembling fingers, he took it. The handshake lasted only a moment. Then Chukwudi pulled his son into a tight embrace. For a second, Obina resisted. Then he embraced him back. Adazi watched them through tears. The sight filled her heart with peace. And for the first time in decades, the wounds of the past no longer felt stronger than the hope of tomorrow. The first reunion happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon in Abuja. When the front door opened, 3 young women came rushing out. They stopped suddenly when they saw him. For a few awkward seconds, nobody spoke. They simply stared at each other, searching for familiar features, looking for traces of the same father. Then the youngest laughed. "Oh my God!" The others looked at her. "What?" She pointed at Obina's face. "You literally have Daddy's eyebrows." The tension shattered instantly. Everyone laughed. Even Obina. For the first time since learning the truth, laughter didn't hurt. Within an hour, the awkwardness began disappearing. His sisters asked endless questions. What was he studying? What music did he like? Which football club did he support? Why was he always so serious? Obina answered cautiously at first, then more openly, then comfortably. Soon it felt less like strangers meeting and more like siblings discovering years stolen from them. The girls were fascinated by him, not because of the scandal, not because of the news reports, but because he was their brother. Their brother, a word that still sounded strange and beautiful at the same time. The youngest eventually wrapped her arms around him unexpectedly. "We've always wanted a brother." Obina froze, then slowly hugged her back, and something inside him softened. Adaz watched quietly from her chair. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years. The family that should have existed decades ago was finally sitting together in the same room. Talking, laughing, living. As evening approached, Chukwudi moved closer to Adaeze. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I am sorry." The simplicity of the words made them more powerful. No excuses, no explanations, just truth. "I should have come back." A tear slid down Adiza's cheek. "Yes," she replied softly, "you should have." For a moment neither spoke. Then Adiza reached for his hand, the same hand she once held beneath the Harmattan skies of Enugu, the same hand that had let go, and now, after all these years, found its way back. Across the room, Obina looked up and saw them, his mother smiling through tears, his father crying openly, his sisters laughing around him, the family he never thought he would have. Slowly he stood and walked over. Without a word, he placed a hand on his father's shoulder. Chukwudi looked up. Their eyes met. And Obina finally said the words Chukwudi had been longing to hear. "I can't change the past." His voice trembled. "But I don't want to lose any more years." Chukwudi broke down completely, pulling his son into a tight embrace. For the first time, Obina embraced him back without hesitation. And as Adiza watched her family reunited at last, she realized that forgiveness was not forgetting what happened. It was choosing that love would have the final word.